The observation deck of Harmony's Edge Station hummed with the quiet buzz of 1,000 different species trying to coexist. Ji-won stood near the large windows, watching ships drift past like metallic fish in an endless ocean. She clutched a worn leather bag close to her chest, the bag that held her most precious possessions, books from Earth. She had been on the station for 3 months now, working as a cultural liaison. Her job was simple in theory but difficult in practice. She was supposed to help alien species understand human culture through stories, art, and conversation. Most aliens found humans fascinating but fragile. Some found them boring. A few found them delicious looking, though they kept those thoughts to themselves during diplomatic meetings. Ji-won was 26 years old, small even by human standards, with gentle eyes that seemed too trusting for someone living among predators and warriors. Her supervisor, Hyun-woo, often told her she needed to be more careful, but Ji-won believed in the power of kindness, even when kindness seemed foolish. Today she had received an assignment that made even her optimistic heart flutter with nervousness. The Valth delegation had requested her services. The Valth, the same species that made even the battle-hardened Krogan warriors step aside in hallways. The same species whose home planet was called the Hunting Grounds, where only the strongest survived to adulthood. The Valth looked like enormous cats. If cats stood 7 feet tall, had silver-white fur marked with dark stripes, and possessed claws that could slice through steel. Their eyes glowed amber in dim light, and their teeth were designed to tear through armor and flesh with equal ease. They were apex predators, and every species in the galaxy knew it. Commander Tae-yang was the leader of the Valth delegation. Ji-won had seen him from a distance during station meetings. He moved like liquid death, every step calculated, every glance sharp enough to cut. His fur was a pristine silver with bold black stripes across his shoulders and back. When he spoke, even the station's administrators listened carefully. Now Ji-won stood outside the Valth quarters, her hand raised to press the door chime. She hesitated. Inside were not just adults, but children. Valth cubs. The message had been clear. Commander Tae-yang needed someone to supervise his twin cubs during an important security meeting. All other Valth were required to attend. Ji-won was the only available option. She pressed the chime. The door slid open with a hiss. Commander Tae-yang stood there, towering over her. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His amber eyes fixed on her like she was prey, and Ji-won had to remind herself to breathe. "You are the human," he said. His voice was deep with a growling undertone that vibrated in her chest. "Yes, sir. I'm Ji-won. I'm here to watch your children during your meeting." Tae-yang's ears flicked back against his skull, a sign of displeasure. "My cubs are not pets to be watched. They are warriors in training. I only accept this arrangement because I have no choice." He stepped aside. "Enter. But understand this, human, if you show weakness, they will sense it. If you show fear, they will attack. It is their nature." Ji-won stepped inside, her bag clutched tighter. The Valth quarters were sparse, decorated only with weapons mounted on walls and pelts stretched across the floor. In the center of the main room, 2 small figures crouched on a raised platform. The cubs were about the size of large dogs, though their muscular build suggested they were much stronger than they looked. One had lighter silver fur and bright, curious eyes. The other had darker markings and a more aggressive posture. Both watched Ji-won with predatory intensity. "Bora, Do-hun," Tae-yang called. "This is the human who will remain with you during my absence. You will not harm her. She is under my protection." He looked at Ji-won. "Bora is my daughter. Do-hun is my son. They understand Standard Galactic, though they rarely speak it." Bora tilted her head, studying Ji-won. Do-hun's lip curled, showing needle-sharp teeth. "They look strong," Ji-won said softly. "You must be proud of them." Tae-yang's ear twitched, possibly surprised by the comment. "They will be great warriors. If they survive their training." He moved toward the door. "I will return in 4 hours. Do not let them leave this room. Do not touch the weapons. Do not run from them, or they will chase you." With that encouraging advice, Commander Tae-yang left. Silence filled the room. Ji-won could hear her own heartbeat. The cubs stared at her, unmoving. She realized they were waiting to see what she would do. Would she try to control them? Would she show fear? Would she treat them like the predators they were? Ji-won sat down on the floor, cross-legged, about 10 feet away from the platform. She set her bag beside her and slowly opened it. The cub's ears perked up, interested despite themselves. "I brought something," Ji-won said quietly. "I thought maybe you'd like to hear a story." Do-hoon snorted, a distinctly dismissive sound. Bora leaned forward slightly. Ji-won pulled out a book. It was old, the cover worn from years of handling. The title read The Velveteen Rabbit in faded gold letters. She had read this book 100 times, maybe 1,000. It had belonged to her younger brother before the accident, before she lost him and her sister in the transport crash that had broken her family apart. She opened the book and began to read. Her voice was soft but clear, filling the quiet room with words about a stuffed rabbit who wanted to become real, who wanted to be loved so much that it hurt. At first, the cubs remained motionless. But slowly, Bora crept down from the platform. She moved silently, her predator's instinct making no sound. She stopped about 5 feet away, her tail twitching as she listened. Do-hoon growled low in his throat, warning his sister not to show interest. But even he couldn't help tilting his head toward the sound of Ji-won's voice. Ji-won kept reading, describing how the rabbit learned about becoming real from the wise old skin horse. She used different voices for different characters, making the horse sound old and kind, making the rabbit sound young and hopeful. Bora moved closer, then closer still. Soon she was sitting just 2 feet away, her glowing eyes fixed on the pictures in the book. "What is that?" Bora whispered, her voice rough and uncertain. Ji-won turned the book slightly so Bora could see better. "This is the rabbit, and this is his friend, the boy who loves him." "Love," Bora repeated the word like it was foreign. "Father says love is weakness." "Some people think that," Ji-won said. "But this story says love makes you real. It makes you matter." Do-hoon had crept down from the platform now too, though he maintained his distance. His ears were forward, listening intently. Ji-won continued reading, and somewhere in the telling of the story something shifted in the room. The cubs were no longer watching her like prey. They were watching her like children who had never heard a bedtime story before. Like children who didn't know that stories could be gentle and warm and safe. When she finished the book, Bora's eyes were wide. "What happens next? Does the rabbit stay real?" "That's the end of the story," Ji-won said. "No more?" Do-hoon asked, finally speaking. His voice was deeper than his sister's. "I have more stories," Ji-won said. "Different stories. Would you like to hear one tomorrow?" The cubs looked at each other, communicating in that silent way siblings do. Then Bora nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "More stories." When Commander Tae-yang returned 4 hours later, he found his cubs sitting peacefully near the human, listening to her read about a wild boy named Max who sailed to an island of monsters. The cubs' claws were retracted, their bodies relaxed, their faces showing something Tae-yang had never seen in them before. Contentment. He stood in the doorway, unsure whether to be concerned or grateful. The next day, Ji-won arrived at the Valth quarters at the same time. She carried her leather bag filled with books, along with a thermos of hot tea and some protein bars. She wasn't sure if she would need them, but her mother had always taught her to be prepared. Commander Tae-yang opened the door before she could press the chime. He looked different somehow, less rigid than before. His amber eyes studied her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "The cubs have been asking for you since morning," he said quietly. "They refuse to train properly. All they talk about is the human and her stories." "I'm sorry if I've disrupted their schedule," Ji-won began. But Tae-yang raised a clawed hand. "Do not apologize. I am uncertain how to proceed. Valth cubs are taught from birth that emotions are weaknesses to be conquered. We teach them to be hard, to be strong, to survive in a universe that shows no mercy." He paused, his tail swishing behind him. "But yesterday I saw them peaceful. I saw them interested in something other than combat. I do not know if this is good or dangerous. Maybe it can be both," Ji-won suggested. "Maybe being strong doesn't mean you can't also be kind." Tae-yang's ears flicked forward, a sign of interest. "You're either very wise or very foolish, human. I have not decided which." He stepped aside. "They are waiting." Inside, Bora and Do-hoon were indeed waiting. Both cubs sat near the spot where Ji-won had sat yesterday, their eyes bright with anticipation. When they saw her, Bora's tail began to swish excitedly. Do-hoon tried to look indifferent, but his ears were perked straight up. "You came back," Bora said, her voice carrying a note of surprise. "I promised I would," Ji-won replied, settling down on the floor. "Did you think I wouldn't?" Promises are often broken, Do-hun said, his tone trying for gruff but not quite achieving it. Father says to trust actions, not words. Your father is right, Ji-won said, opening her bag. That's why I'm here. I'm showing you through my actions that I keep my word. She pulled out a different book today, one with a beautiful blue cover decorated with stars. This story is called The Little Prince. It's about a boy who lives alone on a tiny planet, and he travels to different worlds to understand what matters most in life. What does matter most? Bora asked, moving closer. Let's find out together, Ji-won said, and began to read. The story unfolded slowly, gently. The little prince met strange adults on different planets. A king with no subjects, a conceited man who wanted applause, a businessman counting stars he claimed to own. Each character was lonely in their own way, trapped by their own importance. Do-hun laughed when Ji-won read about the lamplighter who spent his days lighting and extinguishing his lamp. It was a small sound, quickly suppressed, but it was genuine. Bora didn't laugh, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. When Ji-won reached the part about the fox and the little prince, she slowed down, giving each word weight. The fox explained what it meant to be tamed, to create ties that make someone unique among millions of others. What does tamed mean? Bora asked. Like a pet? Not exactly, Ji-won said. The fox says being tamed means creating a bond with someone. It means they become special to you, and you become special to them. You're responsible for each other. Like a pack, Do-hun said suddenly. Father says the pack is everything. We protect the pack even if it costs us our lives. Yes, like a pack, Ji-won agreed. But it's also about choice. The fox chooses to be tamed because it wants that connection, even though it will hurt when they separate. Why would anyone choose something that hurts? Bora asked, confused. Ji-won thought about her siblings, about the pain of losing them, about how she would never trade away the years she had with them, even knowing how it would end. Because having someone special in your life is worth the risk of pain. It's worth everything. The cubs were quiet after that, thinking about concepts their culture had never taught them to value. As the days passed, the reading sessions became a routine. Commander Taeyang's meetings grew longer, or perhaps he was deliberately giving Ji-won more time with his cubs. Either way, Ji-won came every day with new stories. She read them Charlotte's Web, and Bora cried when Charlotte died, tears streaming down her furred face. Do-hun turned away, but his shoulders shook. They learned that death was part of life, but that love and friendship could transcend even that final ending. She read them Where the Wild Things Are, and both cubs roared along with the wild things, their voices filling the quarters with primal joy. They learned that sometimes you need to be wild, but it's also okay to come home to where you're loved. After each story, the cubs would ask questions. They wanted to know everything. Why did humans tell these stories? Did real humans act like the characters? What was Earth like? Did Ji-won have cubs of her own? That last question made Ji-won's heart ache. She told them about her brother and sister, about how she used to read to them every night. She told them about the accident, about how reading stories to children now felt like keeping her siblings alive in some small way. Bora moved closer and gently pressed her head against Ji-won's arm. It was the first time either cub had touched her voluntarily. We're sorry your pack died, she said softly. Thank you, Ji-won whispered, stroking Bora's soft fur. The cubs began bringing her gifts. At first, Ji-won didn't understand what was happening. She would arrive to find shiny objects placed carefully near her usual sitting spot. A polished stone, a small piece of colored glass, a metal pin from someone's uniform. Bora and Do-hun would watch her reactions carefully. Hyun-woo, her colleague, stopped by one day to check on her. He was a tall human with serious eyes and a security officer's cautious nature. When he saw the collection of objects, his eyebrows rose. Ji-won, do you know what these are? He asked quietly, speaking in Korean so the cubs wouldn't understand. Gifts? She replied in the same language. In Valth culture, offering shiny objects is part of bonding behavior. It's what they do when they're forming pack bonds or courtship ties. These cubs are treating you like family. Ji-won looked at Bora and Do-hun, who were watching the conversation with interest even though they couldn't understand the words. Is that bad? I don't know, Hyun-woo admitted. It's unprecedented. Valth don't bond with other species. They barely bond with each other outside of immediate family. This could cause problems, but if there were problems brewing, They seemed distant and unimportant compared to the joy in the cubs' eyes when Ji-won arrived each day. One afternoon, as Ji-won was reading The Giving Tree, Do-hoon interrupted. "Why does the tree give everything away?" "That's foolish. It makes itself weak, does it?" Ji-won asked. "Or is giving love the strongest thing you can do?" "In battle, love is a weakness," Do-hoon insisted, repeating what he'd been taught. "It makes you hesitate. It makes you vulnerable. But you're not always in battle," Ji-won said. "And even warriors need someone to fight for, don't they? What's the point of being strong if you have nothing worth protecting?" Do-hoon had no answer for that. Neither did Bora. By the end of the second week, both cubs would curl up on either side of Ji-won as she read, their warm bodies pressed against her. They would purr softly, a sound Valth rarely made after cubhood. When other Valth officers came to the quarters for meetings, they would stare in shock at the scene. Officer Jae-min, a scarred veteran with dark stripes and cold eyes, confronted Commander Tae-yang one day. "You allow your cubs to behave this way? They purr like helpless infants. They follow the human like she's their mother. This is disgraceful." "They are happy," Tae-yang replied, his voice low and dangerous. "When have you ever seen happy Valth cubs?" "Happy?" Jae-min spat the word. "What use is happiness? We need them fierce and deadly, not soft and weak." But Tae-yang had been watching his cubs carefully. Yes, they were gentler with Ji-won, but he had also noticed that Do-hoon's combat scores had improved. The cub was fighting with purpose now, with something to protect rather than just aggression. And Bora, who had always been hesitant in training, now showed courage she had never displayed before. The stories were not making them weak. They were giving them reasons to be strong. Still, Tae-yang worried. The galaxy was not kind. It was not gentle. And his cubs would need to survive in it, long after this strange human was gone. 3 weeks into the reading sessions, something unexpected happened. Ji-won arrived at the Valth quarters as usual, but before she could press the chime, the door opened. Bora stood there alone, her amber eyes bright with excitement. "Ji-won," she called out, her tail swishing. "Come see what Do-hoon and I made." Ji-won stepped inside and found the main room transformed. The cubs had created drawings, dozens of them, scattered across every surface. They had used some kind of Valth marking tool, dark and bold against pale paper. The drawings showed characters from the stories. The Velveteen Rabbit, the Little Prince and his fox, Charlotte and Wilbur. "These are beautiful," Ji-won said, genuinely amazed. The drawings were crude but filled with emotion. You could see the love the cubs had put into each line. "Father says art is useless," Do-hoon said, emerging from the sleeping chamber. "But we wanted to remember the stories. When we close our eyes at night, we see the pictures you showed us. We wanted to make our own." Commander Tae-yang entered from the corridor, returning from morning training. He stopped when he saw the drawings covering his quarters. His expression was unreadable. "I apologize, Commander," Ji-won began. "If this is inappropriate—" "No," Tae-yang said slowly. "No, let them. Let them create." He picked up one of the drawings, studying it carefully. It showed a rabbit becoming real, surrounded by light. "I have never seen them do anything like this. In our culture, cubs practice combat and hunting. They do not dream. They do not imagine." His voice was quiet. "Perhaps that is why we are so good at war but so poor at peace." Over the following days, the cub's transformation became more obvious. Bora, who had been shy and hesitant, now spoke with confidence. She asked questions about everything. Why did humans smile when they were happy? Why did they cry when sad? Didn't showing emotions make them targets for enemies? Do-hoon remained more guarded, trying to maintain his warrior dignity. But even he couldn't hide the changes. When a maintenance worker got too close to Ji-won one day, Do-hoon positioned himself between them, growling low. His message was clear. This human was under his protection. "I can protect myself," Ji-won said gently afterward. "But thank you for caring." "Father says protecting the pack is the highest honor," Do-hoon replied. "You are pack now, even if you don't have fur or claws." The comment was innocent, but it spread through the Valth delegation like fire. The cubs considered the human pack. Such a thing was unheard of. Valth pack bonds were sacred, limited only to blood family and the closest battle brothers. To extend that bond to an alien, especially one as physically weak as a human, was shocking. Officer Jae-min confronted Tae-yang again, this time in front of other Valth warriors. "Your cubs are becoming a joke. They draw pictures like children from soft species. They speak of love and friendship like weak prey.
And now they claim a human as pack?
You must end this before they are completely ruined. Taeyang's eyes flashed dangerously. You question how I raise my cubs? I question what you are raising them to be, Jaemin replied. Warriors or pets? The two Valth faced each other, tension crackling in the air. The other warriors watched, waiting to see if this would escalate to combat, but Taeyang simply smiled, showing his teeth. Tomorrow the cubs have their combat evaluation. Come watch, then tell me if they have become weak. The next day, the training hall was crowded with Valth warriors, all waiting to see if Commander Taeyang's cubs had been ruined by the human's influence. Ji-won was there too, though she stood at the back, uncertain if she should be present at all. The evaluation was brutal. The cubs faced combat drones programmed to attack without mercy. They had to demonstrate speed, strength, strategy, and ruthlessness. Failure meant repeating months of training. Bora went first. She moved like liquid silver, dodging and striking with precision. But what stunned the watching warriors was her creativity. Instead of following standard attack patterns, she used the environment, improvised, adapted. She fought with intelligence, not just instinct. When she finished, her opponent drones were disabled and she wasn't even breathing hard. The hall was silent with surprise. Do-hun went next. His fighting style was more aggressive than his sister's, more traditional. But he fought with unusual focus, with purpose. Each movement was controlled, efficient. He didn't waste energy on showmanship or unnecessary violence. He fought to protect, not to destroy. When both cubs finished, their scores were the highest any cubs had achieved in recent memory. Officer Jae-min stood rigid, unable to argue with the results. Commander Taeyang looked at him calmly. Still think they have become weak? But not everyone was pleased. Some Valth saw the cubs' success as proof that change was needed. Others saw it as a dangerous deviation from tradition. Arguments erupted in the delegation about whether other cubs should be exposed to human stories and concepts. The controversy reached the station administrators. Ambassador Hana, the human diplomatic representative, called Ji-won to her office. You've created quite a situation, Hana said. She was an older woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back severely. Half the Valth delegation wants to ban you from their quarters. The other half wants to hire you as a cultural consultant. The other species are watching closely to see how this plays out. I was just reading stories to children, Ji-won said quietly. I didn't mean to cause problems. The best changes often start with simple actions, Hana replied. But you need to be careful. The Valth are proud and pride can be dangerous. If they feel humiliated or if they think you're trying to change their culture, there could be consequences. That evening, Ji-won hesitated before going to the Valth quarters. Maybe she should stop the reading sessions. Maybe she was causing more harm than good. But when the door opened, Bora looked up at her with such joy that Ji-won's doubts melted away. You came, Bora said. We were worried you wouldn't. Why would you worry? Ji-won asked. Because everyone is angry, Do-hun said. They say you're making us weak. They say father should send you away. Ji-won knelt down to their level. Do you think you're weak? Both cubs shook their heads firmly. Do you regret the stories we've shared? Never, Bora whispered. The stories make everything better. They make us understand things we never understood before. Then that's all that matters, Ji-won said. But I want you to know something important. These stories, these feelings, they don't make you less Valth. You can be strong warriors and still have kind hearts. You can protect your people and still value love and friendship. The two things don't cancel each other out. They make you more complete. Is that what humans are? Do-hun asked. Warriors with kind hearts? Ji-won thought about human history, about all the wars and violence, but also about all the art and love and sacrifice. We try to be, she said. We don't always succeed, but we try. That night, as Ji-won read from a new book about a boy and his tiger surviving on a lifeboat, Bora suddenly said, Oma. Ji-won looked up, startled. What? Oma, Bora repeated, the Korean word for mother. Do-hun and I were talking. We don't remember our birth mother. She died when we were very small. Father is everything to us, but he cannot be soft. He cannot show weakness or other Valth would challenge him. But you are soft and it doesn't make you weak. You are strong in different ways. So we thought, can we call you Oma? Ji-won's eyes filled with tears. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she just nodded. Do-hun moved closer, pressing his head against her shoulder. Oma, he said quietly, testing the word. Commander Taeyang stood in the doorway, having returned early from his meeting. He had heard everything. For a long moment, he just watched his cubs with the human who had somehow become essential to their happiness. Finally, he spoke. In 2 days, there is a summit meeting. All species leaders will attend. Tensions are high between several factions. There may be violence. He looked at Ji-won. I will need someone to watch the cubs during this time. Someone I trust completely. Will you do this? Of course, Ji-won said. Good. Taeyang paused, then added softly. Thank you for showing them that strength comes in many forms. I could not teach them that. Perhaps I did not know it myself. After he left, Ji-won continued reading, but her voice was thick with emotion. The cubs pressed closer to her, offering comfort in their own way. They were pack now, truly pack, bound together by stories and trust and a love that transcended species. The day of the summit arrived heavy with tension. Ji-won could feel it in the air as she walked through the station corridors. Groups of aliens stood in clusters, speaking in low voices. Security officers moved with heightened alertness. Even the station's lighting seemed dimmer, as if the very walls knew something dangerous was building. She had been working double shifts for the past week. Several delegations needed cultural mediation, and Ji-won was one of the few liaisons trusted by multiple species. She had barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her steps were slower than usual. When she arrived at the Valth quarters, Commander Taeyang opened the door immediately. He wore full ceremonial armor, dark metal plates that gleamed like midnight. His face was grim. The situation is worse than expected, he said without preamble. 3 species are on the verge of declaring war over territorial disputes. Others are taking sides. If violence erupts during the summit, it will spread across this entire sector of space. He looked at Ji-won closely. You look exhausted. I'm fine, Ji-won lied. I can watch the cubs. I am trusting you with the most precious things in my life, Taeyang said quietly. If anything happens, if there is violence, take them to the emergency escape pods. Hyunwoo has been given access codes. He will help you. Nothing will happen to them, Ji-won promised. I swear it. Taeyang nodded, then called to his cubs. Bora and Do-hoon emerged from the sleeping chamber. They wore simple training clothes, but their ears were flat against their skulls, sensing their father's tension. Alma will stay with you during the summit, Taeyang told them. Obey her as you would obey me. Protect her as you would protect Pack. Yes, father, both cubs said together. After Taeyang left, joining the stream of delegates heading to the main conference hall, Ji-won tried to create a sense of normalcy. But the cubs were agitated, pacing the room, their tails lashing. I can smell fear, Bora said. Everyone on the station is afraid. Will there be fighting? Do-hoon asked. His claws extended and retracted nervously. I don't know, Ji-won admitted. She had learned not to lie to them. But your father and the other leaders are doing everything they can to prevent it. Sometimes talking is harder than fighting, but it's more important. Father is the best warrior in our entire species, Do-hoon said proudly. If there is fighting, he will win. But then others would die, Bora said quietly. Like in the stories. Wars always have death. Ji-won pulled her bag closer. Let's go somewhere quiet, away from all this tension. I know a place. She led them through the back corridors of the station to one of her favorite spots, an observation room rarely used because it was located in an older section. The room was small, with a curved wall of transparent steel that looked out into space. Stars spread before them like scattered diamonds on black velvet. It's beautiful, Bora whispered, pressing her face close to the window. Whenever I feel scared or sad, I come here, Ji-won said, settling down against the wall. It reminds me how big the universe is. How many possibilities exist, how much wonder there is beyond our fears. She pulled out a book, one she had saved for a special moment. The cover was green and gold, illustrated with a tree. This story is called The Giving Tree. It's about love and sacrifice and what it means to give everything for someone you care about. The cubs settled on either side of her, their warm bodies pressing close. Ji-won began to read, her voice soft and steady. The story unfolded slowly. The tale of a tree that loved a boy so much she gave him everything. Her apples, her branches, her trunk. Until all that remained was a stump, and the boy had become an old man. That's sad, Bora said. The tree gave everything and has nothing left. But she was happy, Ji-won said, reading the final lines. Because she could still give him a place to rest. Why would that make her happy? Do-hoon asked, confused. She destroyed herself for someone who kept taking and taking. Ji-won thought about how to explain it. Sometimes love means giving even when it's hard, even when it cost you everything. The tree loved the boy so much that making him happy was more important than keeping herself whole. Would you do that? Bora asked. Give everything for someone you love? Ji-won thought about her siblings, about how she would have traded places with them in an instant if she could have. Yes, she said simply. That's what love is. She continued reading other stories, her voice growing softer as exhaustion pulled at her. The cubs didn't seem to mind. They were content just to be close to her, to hear her voice, to feel safe in this small bubble of peace while the galaxy teetered on the edge of chaos outside. Ji-won's eyes grew heavy. She tried to focus on the words, but they blurred on the page. Her voice slowed, words slurring slightly. The cubs pressed closer, their warmth like a blanket. She read one more sentence, then another. Her head drooped against the wall, and then, without meaning to, without even realizing it was happening, Ji-won fell asleep. The book slipped from her hands, landing softly on her lap. For a long moment, the cubs didn't move. They had never seen a human sleep before. Valth slept, but it was a light, alert sleep, always ready to wake at the slightest sound. This was different. Ji-won's breathing was deep and even. Her face was peaceful, vulnerable in a way that made both cubs' instincts flare with protective urgency. Is she hurt? Bora whispered, her voice tight with fear. Do-hun leaned close, sniffing carefully. No, I think this is how humans rest. She's exhausted. Should we wake her? No, Do-hun said firmly. She's been taking care of us for weeks. Now it's our turn to take care of her. Something ancient and instinctive stirred in both cubs. They had been taught combat and hunting, strategy and survival. But deeper than training, older than lessons, was the pack bond. And pack protected pack always. Bora moved first, carefully curling up on Ji-won's left side. She positioned herself so that anyone approaching would have to go through her first. Her body was small, but her intent was fierce. Do-hun took the right side, mirroring his sister. He extended his claws slightly, ready but not threatening. His ears swiveled constantly, monitoring every sound in the station. Together, the cubs formed a living shield around the sleeping human. Their bodies radiated warmth, their presence a wall of protection. They began to purr, soft and rhythmic, the way adult Valth purred over their mates and packmates. Time passed. 1 hour, then 2, then 3. The cubs never moved. Their eyes stayed open, alert, watching. When a maintenance drone floated past the observation room's door, both cubs' heads snapped toward it, tracking until it moved away. Outside the window, stars wheeled slowly in their eternal dance. Ships passed in the distance, unaware of the small drama playing out in the forgotten observation room. Inside the station, in the main conference hall, voices rose in anger. Threats were made. Alliances fractured. Commander Taeyang stood between two delegations ready to tear each other apart, his voice firm but his heart heavy. But here, in this quiet corner of Harmony's Edge, 3 beings rested in perfect peace. A human who had given everything to show 2 young predators what love meant, and 2 cubs who had learned the lesson so well that they would guard her sleep with their lives. Ji-won slept on, unaware of the danger brewing in the station, unaware of the diplomatic crisis exploding in the conference hall, unaware of anything except the warmth and safety of the cubs pressed against her sides. Bora and Do-hun kept watch. They would protect their Oma. Nothing would harm her while they breathed. The universe could wait. War could wait. Everything could wait. This moment was sacred, and they would defend it absolutely. Hours passed in that suspended peace, the cubs purring a gentle lullaby in the silence, their vigil unwavering. And when the door finally opened, when Commander Taeyang and his elite guard stood frozen at the threshold, they would see something that would change the course of Valth culture forever. They would see love made visible. They would see what it meant to be truly strong. The summit had been a disaster. Commander Taeyang walked through the station corridors with his elite guard flanking him. Warrior Minji, whose silver fur bore the scars of 100 battles, and Warrior Sujin, younger but deadly precise. Behind them came Officer Jaemin and 3 other senior warriors, all radiating barely controlled fury. The conference had collapsed into shouting, threats, and nearly open violence. 3 species had walked out. 2 more were threatening sanctions. Only Taeyang's intervention had prevented actual bloodshed, but it had been close. Too close. We should have let them fight, Jaemin growled as they walked. Sometimes violence is the only language species understand. Violence is easy, Tae-Yang replied, his voice tight with exhaustion. Peace is the true challenge. Now all he wanted was to see his cubs, to reassure himself that they were safe in this increasingly dangerous station. He had been away for almost 5 hours, longer than planned. The human should have taken them back to the quarters by now, but when he arrived at his quarters, they were empty. Tae-Yang's blood went cold. Where are they? Warrior Minji immediately accessed the station's tracking systems. The human's identification signal is in Sector 7, the old observation room. Why would she take them there? Jamin demanded. That area's isolated, Sujin noted. If someone wanted to harm the cubs. Tae-Yang was already running. His guard followed, weapons drawn, fearing the worst. The corridors blurred past. Other aliens pressed against walls to let the armed Valth pass, sensing their urgency. They reached the observation room, and Tae-Yang hit the door control. The door slid open with its usual hiss. Then everyone stopped. The scene before them seemed impossible, something from a dream or a story. The human sat against the wall, clearly asleep. Her head tilted at an angle that looked uncomfortable. The book that had fallen from her lap lay open on the floor, its pages showing an illustration of a tree. But what froze every warrior in place were the cubs. Bora and Do-hoon were curled around the human, one on each side, their bodies forming a protective circle. Their claws were extended, ready for any threat. Their ears were swiveling, tracking sounds. Their eyes, glowing in the dim light, were alert and fierce. When the door opened, both cubs' heads snapped toward the entrance. They saw the warriors, and immediately their bodies tensed, ready to fight. Low growls rumbled in their throats. They were protecting her. Warrior Minji took a step forward, intending to check on the cubs, but Do-hoon's growl deepened. His message clear, "Stay back, Do-hoon," Tae-Yang said softly. "It's me, your father." "She's sleeping," Do-hoon replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't wake her. She's so tired." "We're protecting Alma," Bora added, her tone fierce despite her small size. "Like you taught us." "Pack protects pack," the warriors stared. This was not how cubs behaved. Valth cubs were aggressive, territorial with their own kind, but they didn't protect other species. They certainly didn't curl up with them like this, purring like they were guarding their own mother. Officer Jae-min found his voice first. This is not natural. This is wrong." But Warrior Minji, who had raised cubs of her own long ago, saw something else. She saw the perfect positioning, the way the cubs had placed themselves for optimal defense. She saw their alertness, their focus, their unwavering dedication. "This is not wrong," she said quietly. "This is what we've been trying to teach them since birth." "This is pack loyalty? To a human?" Jamin protested. "She has made them weak, made them what?" Tae-Yang interrupted, his voice sharp. "Look at them. Look closely. Do they appear weak to you?" Everyone looked again. The cubs were small, yes, but their stance was perfect. Their eyes were clear and focused. They had positioned themselves to defend against multiple attackers, using the wall and the window to protect their flanks. Their formation was textbook defense posture. They had been paying attention during all those training sessions. They knew exactly what they were doing. "How long have they been like this?" Sujin asked. Tae-Yang checked his chronometer. The human's last message was 4 hours ago. They may have been guarding her this entire time. 4 hours. 4 hours of motionless vigilance. That was remarkable even for trained warriors, let alone cubs. The sound of running footsteps echoed in the corridor, and Hyunwoo appeared, breathing hard. He saw the scene and his eyes widened. "Is everyone all right?" "When Jiwon didn't check in, I got worried." "The human is sleeping," Tae-Yang said. "My cubs are..." Watching over her. Hyunwoo's expression softened. "She's been working herself to exhaustion. Multiple delegations have been demanding her help with cultural issues. She barely sleeps anymore." He looked at the cubs. They can sense that. They're taking care of her. Ambassador Hana arrived moments later, drawn by reports of armed Valth moving through the station. She took in the scene with the practiced eye of someone who had spent decades in diplomatic service. "Remarkable," she breathed. "Absolutely remarkable." More people began to arrive, drawn by curiosity or concern. Representatives from different species gathered at the doorway, peering in. Word spread through the station like wildfire. The deadly Valth cubs were protecting a sleeping human. Jiwon finally stirred. disturbed by the murmur of voices. Her eyes fluttered open, confused. She saw the crowd at the door, saw Commander Tae-Yang and his warriors, and realized she had fallen asleep. "I'm so sorry," she said immediately, trying to sit up. "I didn't mean to." But the cubs pressed closer, stopping her movement. "Don't apologize, Amma," Bora said. "You needed rest." "We protected you," Do-hun added proudly. "Just like you taught us. Love means protecting those who matter, even when you're tired or scared." Ji-won's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the cubs, seeing the devotion in their faces, and her heart felt too full for her chest. Tae-Yang stepped into the room slowly, approaching his cubs. They watched him but didn't move from their protective positions. He knelt down, bringing himself to their level. "You have done well," he told them, his voice carrying a note of deep pride. "You have learned what I could not teach you. You have learned that true strength is not just in claws and teeth. It is in loyalty, in love, in choosing to protect those who cannot protect themselves." He looked at Ji-won, this small human who had somehow changed everything. "My cubs have chosen you as pack. In Valth culture, this is sacred. It cannot be revoked, cannot be dismissed." He stood, addressing the crowd at the door. "I declare before all witnesses, Ji-won is pack. She is under the protection of Clan Tae-Yang. Any who threaten her threaten us." A shocked murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Such a declaration was unprecedented. Valth had never claimed a member of another species as pack. Never. Officer Jae-min looked like he wanted to protest, but even he could not argue with a formal pack declaration made before witnesses. Ambassador Hana stepped forward, her diplomatic instincts recognizing the historic moment. "Commander Tae-Yang, the Galactic Coalition would be honored if you would consider expanding this cultural exchange. What your cubs have learned, what they've shown us today, could change how species interact throughout the galaxy. Other Valth cubs could benefit from human stories," Tae-Yang asked. "Not just Valth cubs," Hana said. "Cubs and children from every species. If we teach the next generation that strength includes compassion, that protection includes love, imagine what kind of galaxy we could build." Tae-Yang was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at his cubs, still pressed protectively against the human. He saw their happiness, their confidence, their completeness. They were better than he had ever been at their age. They were whole in a way he had never learned to be. "I will discuss this with the Valth Council," he said finally. "But I believe my cubs have already shown us the way forward." Over the following weeks, the story of the sleeping human and her protective cubs spread across the galaxy. It became a symbol, a hope that different species could find common ground not through treaties or trade, but through the simple act of caring for each other. The tensions that had nearly erupted into war began to cool. Delegates who had been ready to fight found themselves wondering, if Valth cubs could learn compassion, what else was possible? Ji-won was offered a position as the first official cultural ambassador to the Valth homeworld. The proposal came with a generous salary, her own quarters, and most importantly, the promise that she would help develop a new program, teaching Valth cubs through stories and literature. She accepted immediately. Bora and Do-hun were ecstatic. They would not be separated from their Oma, and they would help her teach other cubs the lessons they had learned. On her last day at Harmony's Edge Station, Ji-won stood in the observation room where everything had changed. Bora and Do-hun stood beside her, taller now, stronger, but still her devoted cubs. "Are you nervous?" Bora asked. "The homeworld is very different from the station. Other Valth might not accept you." "I'm terrified," Ji-won admitted. "But I'm also excited, because I believe in the power of stories. I believe that children of every species deserve to know that being strong doesn't mean being cruel. That loving someone doesn't make you weak. You changed us," Do-hun said simply. "You can change others too." Commander Tae-Yang entered the room carrying a formal case. "Before we depart, I have something for you." He opened the case, revealing a piece of silver metal worked into a pendant. The symbol engraved on it was the mark of his clan. "This is yours now," he said, fastening it around her neck. "You are pack. You are family. No Valth will question your place among us." Ji-won touched the pendant, feeling its weight. "Thank you, for trusting me with your cubs, for letting me show them a different way." "No," Tae-Yang said. "Thank you for showing all of us that there is strength in gentleness, power in compassion, and courage in love. You have given us something we did not even know we were missing." As their ship departed Harmony's Edge, heading toward the Valth homeworld, Ji-won looked back at the station one last time. Hyunwoo had come to see her off, along with Ambassador Hana and dozens of others whose lives she had touched. She thought about her siblings, about how she had promised herself she would honor their memory by helping children. She had kept that promise in ways she never could have imagined. Bora and Do-hoon pressed close to her sides, their warmth familiar and comforting. Ahead lay challenges, resistance from traditional Valth, the difficulty of changing an entire culture. But she was not alone. She had her cubs. She had their father's support. And she had something even more powerful. Proof that love could bridge any divide, that stories could change hearts, and that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was simply care for someone who needed you. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward a future built on the simple truth that a human had taught two predator cubs. Love is not weakness. Love is the greatest strength of all,